All right, so today we're going to talk about special angles that deal with that occur when we have two parallel lines together. And so first of all, we need to talk about a transversal. So a transversal is a line intersecting two or more other lines in the plane. Sorry, for some reason it should say intersecting. Okay, a line intersecting two or more other lines in the plane. Now a transversal doesn't just have to intersect two parallel lines. Okay, so an example is you could have like two lines here. Let's just say they're going opposite directions. Okay, you could have a transversal that cuts right here. So the blue line would be transversal. It just has to intersect two lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about corresponding angles. And so the example of corresponding angles, so if this is me taking notes, I would draw this diagram right here. You see this diagram? Okay. To the left of it, I would put corresponding angles, and I would put 1 and 5. And then the next slide, we're going to also have some other angles, and you'll be able to list them. But corresponding angles, angles 1 and 5 are corresponding. Okay. Now, 1 and 5 are not the only corresponding angles in that diagram. Okay, with that in mind, just from looking and seeing that 1 and 5 are corresponding angles, I want somebody to take a guess and tell me what would two other corresponding angles be. I don't care, somebody. 2 and 6. Okay, so angle 2 and 6 are also corresponding. And you might have already seen this before. What would be two other ones? 3 and 7 and 4 and 8. So basically, if you look at this, corresponding angles occur on the same side, okay, of the transversal and on the same side of the line. Okay. So, top of the line, right side of the transversal. So that's how you figure out what corresponding angles are. All right, alternate interior angles on the other hand. Okay. Example of alternate interior angles are 3 and 6. So we got to think of those words. Alternate. Opposite. Other side. Interior. Inside. So another set of alternate interior angles.
4 and 5.
4 and 5. There are no more because there are no more interior angles. Okay? Interior means on the inside of the lines. So what can you guess 1, 2, 7, and 8 are? Exterior, because they're on the outside, right? So we're going to talk about alternate exterior angles. Great segue. Okay. So alternate exterior angles. 2 and 7, once again on alternate sides of the transversal on the outside of the two lines. So what would two other alternate exterior angles be?
1 and 8.
1 and 8. Okay. So far, so good? So you're going to need to be able to identify corresponding alternate interior angles and alternate exterior angles. Okay? So now what I want you to do is you actually have an investigation. This is on page 128. And I'm going to let you go ahead and do this in your groups, but I'm going to get you started. Okay, so turn to page 128. I've already given you patty paper. Okay, each group should have patty paper. It says, using the lines on your paper as a guide, draw a pair of parallel lines. Okay, so don't draw it on the patty paper. Okay, what they're actually wanting you to do is they're wanting you to draw the set of 8 lines here on your notebook paper. And see, the reason why they want you to do this is because you can for sure draw that they're parallel by using your notebook lines. So what you're going to do in your notebook, I would probably draw one parallel line, and then I would skip down probably about 5 or 6 lines, draw your second line, and then just draw any transversal that crosses those. Okay?
Yeah, so confused.
So, yeah, and if you did, see the thing is, if you went ahead and drew a big enough diagram in your notes on the first one, you can use that. Okay? Once you get done drawing that, we'll continue with your next part. Okay, what you need to do now is label them as they have. L, K, M, and then label all the angles. And I want you to label those exactly as what's in the diagram.
You draw this on it?
Not, you know, none of that in your book,
Oh, okay.
in your notes. No, you should be doing this in your notebook. That's what I said. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're going to have a sheet of paper. It should have something like this. Okay. You see what Kel has at the bottom here? Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your patty paper, all right, and notice what it says. What does the directions say? Place a piece of patty paper over the sets of angles 1, 2, 3, and 4. Copy the 2 intersecting lines M and L and the 4 angles onto the patty paper. So I want you to do that on the top half of your patty paper. You're just going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to trace them and go from there. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You still have that paper.
What paper? Oh, I give it to Kelly. Kelly's got it there. Right-handed.
Do you want to still label this one?
Yep, you need a label.
Me?
Oh,
Yep, go ahead.
so,
It's cold and it's cold. It's cold and freezing. And twirling. It's really warm. It's freaking cool.
Okay, so everybody should have that done on your patty paper. So let's look at what it says again. It says slide the patty paper down to the intersection of M and K. So you're going to slide down the 1, 2, 3, 4 down so that it mirrors 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay? Now let's see what it says. It says I want you to compare angles 1 through 4 with each of the angles 5 through 8. What is the relationship between corresponding angles?
They're on the same scale.
So corresponding angles, remember, were 1 and 5. What do you notice about angle 1 and 5?
they're the exact same.
They're the exact same. What do you notice about alternate interior angles? So alternate interior angles would be 3 and alternate interior angles.
If you
3
flip
and
it around
6.
upside down,
Yep, if you flip around 3 and 6, you find out that those are the
exact
same. What about alternate exterior? What do you know about 2 and 7?
They're the exact same.
They're the same. Okay? So, we've got some conjectures here. Now, if you can see the board, great. Otherwise, they're also in page 129 in your book. And we're going to go through and fill these in. The first one is the corresponding angles conjecture. If 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are, what do you think they are? Equal. So what do we say, since we're dealing with geometric figures?
Congruent.
Congruent. Good job.
What was the first conjecture that we had about
Overlapping
lines?
segments. You overlapping segments. I don't think we ever use it.
Do you want us to draw the?
Yeah, thirds. See, you don't have to draw the diagrams, you can if you want. When you get done with that one, you can start writing the alternate interior, because what do you know about alternate interior angles? What were they?
Congruent.
Congruent. And likewise the same with alternate exterior angles. So I'm going to let you go ahead and write down those three. When you get those written down, we'll continue. Okay, but it'll take a little bit of time. Now when you write the alternate interior angles conjecture, you may also want to make sure that you put AIA in like parentheses. Same thing with the CA and the AEA. Okay, because when we start writing down some proofs, it'll help to have that abbreviation as opposed to all the words.
We'll just combine the second two.
Okay, we ready to go? Okay, so let's go and see what we have on our next slide. We have the parallel lines conjecture, so another one. Okay, so let's look at this and figure out what goes in the blank. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are, alternate interior angles are, and alternate exterior angles are. And you know that the answers are all congruent. This is basically a combination of all of the three previous ones.
We put CA.
What?
We put like CA in abbreviations.
Well, you're the one that's going to have to be using it, so. Okay, so let's look at this question they've got posed. What happens if the lines you start with are not parallel? Then they won't be congruent. And hopefully you can see that by looking at this angle. Because what type of angle is this?
Obtuse.
Obtuse. This one might be a little obtuse, but it's not near what the first one is. Okay, so the lines have to be parallel in order to start with. Okay, so let's think about this. Is this true? If two lines are cut by a transversal to form pairs of congruent corresponding angles, congruent alternate interior angles, and congruent alternate exterior angles, then the lines are. You think that'll be true? If you know the angles are the same, will you be able to conclude the lines are parallel?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we just looked at the fact that that doesn't work. It doesn't work if you don't have parallel lines. So yeah, this is another conjecture. Lots of conjectures today. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. See what we can. Okay. Oh, holy cow, that skipped a bunch, didn't it? Let's go back. It says write a deductive argument. So deductive means we're going to probably use some numbers, some algebraic ideas here. Okay, explaining why the alternate interior angles conjecture is true. Assume that the vertical angles conjecture and corresponding angles conjecture are both true. So let's think about that. If we know the corresponding angles conjecture is true, what can we conclude? That we can conclude that angle 1 and angle 2 are the same, right? That's by the corresponding angles. So we know that the measure of angle 1 equals measure of angle 2. Reason, that's the corresponding angles conjecture. Notice how now the shortcuts kind of came in handy. Don't have to write out corresponding angles. So now they also told us we probably could use the vertical angles conjecture. So what do you know about the vertical angles? Angle 1 is the same as what? Angle 3. So now we can say that the measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 3. Vertical angle conjecture. So let's think back to yesterday's deductive argument that we looked at. Because we're going to have to do something real similar. Remember the one with the 180 degrees? What could be my next step then down here?
You could take out that and the measure of angle 1 and replace it with the other one.
You know both of these equal the measure of angle 1, right? So therefore you can conclude that 2 has to equal 3. It's kind of like you're replacing angle 2 down here with angle 1, because those are the same thing. Okay, so the measure of angle 2 equals measure of angle 3. That reason is just by substitution. You're substituting that in. That's one of those properties from algebra. And so it says, write a deductive argument explaining why the alternate interior angles conjecture is true. Well, let's see. 2 is congruent to 3. What do you know about 2 is congruent to 3? They're alternate interior angles. Okay, so therefore, you know that the alternate interior angles conjecture has to be true. We just used a deductive argument. Pretty straightforward. All right, with that in mind, here you go. Okay. So your assignment is 1 through 7, 9 and 10, 14 through 16, 20 through 22. Now a lot of these are just going to be finding the measure of the angle. So you're going to have to utilize those conjectures that we did.